In a world suffocated by smog, where the air was thick with chemicals and the oceans had turned into vast garbage patches, there was a place untouched by the decay. A city hidden deep in the mountains, beyond the reach of human greed and technology, remained a sanctuary of life and purity. This city was called Arindor, a name passed down through generations, though few outside its borders knew of its existence. Arindor was built not with steel and stone, but with living wood and plants, cultivated to create homes and bridges that flourished like the very forest around them. The people of Arindor lived in harmony with the land, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of nature. They understood the language of the wind, the songs of the rivers, and the wisdom of the trees. The elders told stories of a time long past when the outside world had once known peace, but those days had been forgotten by the time the last generation of Arindor was born. The city's inhabitants, called the Sylvari, were not like those who had ravaged the world beyond. They lived without technology, without machinery, and without the constant hum of progress. Instead, they lived with an ancient form of wisdom, guided by the elements and the deep connection they shared with the earth. Their society was built on respect, unity, and balance. They did not need artificial light or machines. The glow of the bioluminescent plants and the songs of the night creatures filled their lives with warmth. However, in the year that marked the turning of a new century, a new presence made itself known. It started as a whisper on the wind, a sensation that crawled under the skin of the Sylvari. Some of the children had noticed it first, as they played near the borders of the city. They spoke of strange lights in the sky, shifting shadows where there were no shadows. But when the elders asked, the children would speak no more of it. It was as if they had forgotten the words to explain what they had seen. Days passed, and the whispers turned into something more. The wind itself felt wrong. It carried with it a strange hum, an unnatural vibration that echoed in the bones of the Sylvari. The trees trembled, their leaves curling as if in fear. The rivers, once pure and clear, began to cloud with strange particles, a sign that something was stirring beyond the city's protective walls. The elder council of Arindor called for a gathering. There, gathered in the heart of their sacred grove, the Sylvari listened as the most ancient among them, High Elder Lyra, spoke of the old prophecies. She told them of a time when the world would change, a time when the sky would be split asunder, and the earth would tremble under forces beyond mortal understanding. The world beyond, Lyra said, her voice trembling with both reverence and fear, is waking. But what they do not understand is that they are not just threatening us, they are threatening something far greater. Something older than even the oldest of our trees. The Sylvari fell silent, and in the stillness, the air grew thick with anticipation. Then, High Elder Lyra spoke the words that would change everything. The stars are aligned, and something else stirs, not just from the earth, but from the very heavens. The crowd murmured in disbelief, for the stars had always been a distant, unreachable thing. The thought that they might hold some force of destruction, some cosmic presence, was too much to bear. But the wind howled once again, louder, sharper, more insistent than ever before. It was not just a wind. It was a call. Somewhere, far beyond their protected borders, the outside world was beginning to encroach. The machines of the humans had been silenced long ago, but now, they stirred once more. And with them, something else was coming. The day after High Elder Lyra's ominous words, a heavy mist descended over Arindor. It wasn't like the normal morning fog that blanketed the city in cool quietude. This mist felt wrong, dense, unnatural, almost as if it carried a sense of urgency. It clung to the trees, curling around the roots, and seeped into the homes of the Sylvari, causing an unease that no one could shake. That night, as the stars flickered faintly above, a strange glow appeared on the horizon. At first, it was subtle, just a flicker, a pulse of light that seemed out of place against the backdrop of the mountains. But as the night deepened, the glow intensified, and the pulse became a rhythmic thrum, like the heartbeat of some immense creature stirring to life. A young Sylvari named Elowen, barely 15 summers old, stood on the edge of the city, staring out into the distance. She had always been sensitive to the energies of the world, able to sense shifts in the earth and sky long before others. But what she felt now was unlike anything she had ever encountered. It wasn't a natural energy. It was foreign, alien, and familiar all at once. "Elowen, come inside," her mother, Selra, called from the doorway. Her voice was tight with concern. "The mist is thickening, and it's not safe to be out here alone." But Elowen didn't move. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the pulsating light. It called to her, as if it recognized her, or perhaps was searching for her. She felt an inexplicable pull, a force beyond her understanding, something that resonated deep in her very core. "I'm not alone," Elowen murmured under her breath, though her voice trembled. She could feel a presence nearby, not just in the physical world, but in the space between her thoughts. Something ancient, something vast. Behind her, the trees creaked and groaned as though responding to her thoughts. The wind, which had once been comforting, now seemed harsh and sharp. Elowen could feel it pressing against her skin, urging her to go, to leave the safety of the city and follow the strange light, follow the call that echoed in the depths of her soul. But before she could take a step, a hand gripped her shoulder. It was Lyra. "Elowen," High Elder Lyra's voice was soft but firm. "This is not your path. The call you feel is not meant for you. Do not follow it." The young girl turned, her eyes wide with both wonder and fear. "But, it's calling me. I can't explain it. I feel connected." Lyra's gaze softened. "I know, child. The connection you feel is the pull of something ancient, something beyond even the power of the Sylvari. But you must resist. The balance of the world is shifting, and if you follow that call, you may not return." The elder's words sank deep into Elowen's heart, but the call was growing louder, drowning out her doubt. The thrum of the light, the pulse in the air, it was all-consuming. Orindor was never meant to be a sanctuary forever, Lyra continued, her voice grave. The forces beyond these walls are stirring. The pollution that devastated the outside world did not vanish. It has simply festered. The very fabric of the cosmos itself is being torn apart by the greed and destruction that once ruled this world. Elowen felt the weight of Lyra's words. They were not just warnings, they were truths. She had heard stories, whispered rumors of the ancient wars, the pollution that had corrupted the land, the skies, the seas. It had been a time of great darkness, when humanity had turned against the earth. The forces of nature had rebelled, but the humans had been too blind, too destructive to see. The destruction of their own world had been inevitable, but now, the very fabric of the earth, and perhaps even the stars, was on the verge of collapse. Elowen knew that something beyond human control was rising, and in some inexplicable way, she was part of it. "Please, Elowen," Lyra said, pulling the girl back toward the safety of the city. "Listen to me. There is a deeper truth to this call. Something is trying to breach the veil between worlds, and if it succeeds, what happens then?" Elowen's voice was barely a whisper, but the fear in it was palpable. "If it succeeds," Lyra said, her face pale, "the boundaries between the worlds will shatter. Orindor, your life, everything we've protected, will be lost." The wind picked up, howling through the trees as if in agreement, and for the first time, Elowen felt the weight of the world pressing against her. The air was heavy, filled with the scent of ozone, of a storm that had not yet fully arrived but was closing in on them. She could feel the pull of the strange light in the distance, and yet she knew, somehow, that the path ahead was not hers to take. Not yet, but as the mist thickened and the stars dimmed, one thing became clear to her. The city of Orindor was no longer the untouched sanctuary it had once been. The world outside was calling, and whether the Sylvari were ready or not, it was coming for them. The following days passed in uneasy silence. The elders kept to their chambers, their voices hushed in urgent conversation, while the people of Orindor moved as though walking through a waking dream, caught between fear and confusion. The wind carried an unsettling vibration, and the once crystal-clear rivers now shimmered with an iridescent sheen that none could explain. It was as if the very world was changing around them, shifting in subtle but dangerous ways. Elowen, despite the warnings of the elders, could not shake the feeling that something was missing. She felt disconnected from the city, as if it no longer belonged to her. The pull of the strange light remained strong, gnawing at her every thought. She found herself returning to the edge of the city, staring out at the distant glow on the horizon, searching for answers. But the more she sought the light, the more elusive it became. It flickered in and out of view, just at the edge of her perception, as though it was being hidden from her. It was as if the very fabric of reality was warping around the city, creating barriers that prevented her from fully reaching it. Then, one night, as the moon hung heavy in the sky, something unprecedented occurred. The stars above Arindor flickered in unison, like candles snuffed out by an invisible wind. And then, a crack. It was not an ordinary sound. It was a deep, resonating rupture that vibrated through the ground beneath her feet, through her chest, as if the very sky was tearing apart. The air grew thick with energy, charged and restless, and the trees of Arindor shuddered as if bracing for the shockwave to follow. From the crack in the heavens, a cascade of light poured through. It was not the gentle glow of the stars, nor the pulsing hum of the distant beacon that had drawn Elowen's attention for so long. This light was harsh and raw, like an unfiltered stream of energy, an ancient power breaking free of its bonds. It danced across the sky in violent waves, striking the mountainside with such force that the very earth trembled. Elowen stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. The crack was growing wider, a rift in the sky itself that threatened to swallow the stars. The air began to hum with a terrible power, and in the distance, the strange light she had been following flared brighter than ever before, now unmistakably tied to the phenomenon above. Her thoughts were clouded with confusion and terror. What was this force? What was this thing that had torn the heavens open? And then she remembered the elders' words. Something beyond even the power of the Sylvari. The very fabric of the cosmos itself is being torn apart. The rift in the sky widened further, and a sound like 1,000 whispers filled the air. The voices were disembodied, echoing across the land, filling the minds of the Sylvari with the weight of their message. The city, once isolated and untouchable, was no longer shielded from the outside world. The breach had begun, and there was no turning back. Elowen felt the presence again, the strange pull, the cosmic energy, now unmistakably calling her forward. But this time, it was no longer just the light that beckoned. The whispers in her mind were urging her to step beyond the city's borders, to enter the rift. Child of Arindor, the voices whispered, their words heavy with an ancient power, the veil has been torn. The time of the Sylvari has passed. You are the key. The wind howled, a wild, frantic energy coursing through the trees, as though they too were caught in the storm of the rift. The other Sylvari were beginning to notice the strange disturbances. Some stared at the sky in horror, others in disbelief. The crack had reached its peak, and the air was thick with tension. Elowen's gaze flicked to the horizon. The strange light had turned from a distant beacon into a swirling vortex, spiraling into the heavens. It was calling to her, insisting she follow it, claiming her like a moth to a flame. She knew that if she didn't act soon, whatever had caused this rift would tear through the city, through her people, and beyond. She took a hesitant step toward the rift, the urge to follow overpowering everything else. But before she could move any further, she felt a hand on her shoulder, pulling her back. It was High Elder Lyra again, her face etched with worry. Elowen, do not go, Lyra pleaded, her voice urgent. This is not your path to walk. The breach is not something we are meant to tamper with. It is a force from beyond, a force that has been sealed for a reason. But I can feel it, Elowen gasped, her voice trembling with the weight of the energy coursing through her. It's calling me. I have to go. I have to understand. Lyra shook her head, her eyes clouded with a sorrowful wisdom. The breach is not just a tear in the sky, child. It is a gateway. And what waits on the other side is not the salvation you seek. It is the very thing that brought about the world's ruin, the force that was sealed away for a reason. You do not want to open that door. Before Elowen could respond, a voice, sharp and filled with authority, cut through the growing chaos. Master Silas, the head of the warrior order, stepped forward from the shadows, his face grim but resolute. Lyra is right, Elowen, Silas said. We cannot afford to allow this breach to open any further. The outside world, the chaos that caused this pollution, has found its way back into our realm. If it fully enters, it will consume everything. Not just Arindor, but the whole of existence. For the first time, Elowen felt a deep cold creep into her heart. The choice was no longer hers alone. The balance of the world was at stake. The rift was growing wider, and she knew that whether she stepped forward or not, the forces at play were beyond her control. The world was changing, and soon, Arindor would be forced to confront its role in the greater war between destruction and survival. The sky above Arindor had become a storm of celestial fury. The rift had opened wider, like a wound in the fabric of existence, and the strange light that had once flickered far off on the horizon now cascaded down into the city like an unstoppable tide. The air crackled with energy, as though the heavens themselves were at war with the earth. Elowen stood frozen, caught between the pleas of High Elder Lyra and Master Silas, the ancient wisdom of Arindor, and the force pulling her toward the breach. Her heart raced, her mind torn between loyalty to her people and an undeniable call. A force so powerful that it felt as though it had always been a part of her, waiting for this very moment. I cannot stop it, Elowen whispered, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Her hands trembled as she reached out toward the rift, which seemed to pulse with life, as if it could sense her proximity. Elowen, Lyra's voice cracked with urgency, but Elowen didn't respond. Her gaze remained locked on the swirling vortex above. You're not the one meant to carry this burden, Silas added, his deep voice carrying a note of finality. You cannot understand what this means, what it will cost. Elowen turned to them, the conflict in her eyes evident. She wanted to turn away. She wanted to stay with her people and protect them from the storm outside. But the pull from beyond the rift was undeniable. It wasn't just a voice or a call. It was a truth that she felt in the marrow of her bones, one that had been hidden from her all her life. I have to know what's on the other side, Elowen said quietly, more to herself than to the others. I can feel it. This force isn't just destruction. It's purpose. For a long moment, no one spoke. The wind howled through the trees, sending leaves spiraling into the air like lost whispers. Then, High Elder Lyra's face softened with a knowing sadness. You are not the first to feel this pull, Lyra said quietly, her eyes distant as she spoke, and you won't be the last. It's the same temptation that has haunted the history of the world. A temptation to break the veil, to breach the boundary between worlds. Temptation? Elowen questioned, her voice laced with confusion. But if this force has been sealed away for so long, doesn't that mean it has the answers? The truth we've been denied? Lyra's gaze hardened, her face now a mask of both fear and sorrow. The truth you seek comes with a cost, child. The very force that now calls to you, the light that beckons, was once the seed of destruction that ravaged the world. It was the greed of the ancient humans that tore apart the earth, the same humans who attempted to harness this power for themselves. They called it the Aether, a cosmic force capable of reshaping reality itself. But they underestimated it. What they thought was a gift was a curse. It is no savior. It is a force that corrupts, that consumes everything it touches. Elowen's heart pounded in her chest. The Aether. The name sounded so familiar, as if it had been buried deep in the memories of the Sylvari, passed down through the elders, stories but never truly understood. It was said that the Aether had been sealed away in the heart of the earth, imprisoned to prevent it from consuming the world completely. But hearing Lyra's words, Elowen realized that what she had thought was an ancient legend was in fact a terrifying reality. Why'd I feel this pull? Elowen whispered. If this is a curse, why'd I need to go to it? You are the key, Elowen, Lyra replied solemnly. The ether has always sought a vessel, a mind that could understand its chaos, a heart that could carry its burden. You, child, are the one it has chosen. Elowen felt the weight of those words sink into her, a coldness spreading through her chest. She had always been different, always felt a deeper connection to the world around her, to the winds, the trees, the very heartbeat of the earth. But now, it became clear that this connection was not merely a gift. It was a curse, one that had been passed down through generations, one that she could no longer escape. Elowen, Silas said, his voice softer now, you don't have to carry this alone. We will stand with you. If this ether is real, we will fight it together. But Elowen knew deep down that the ether wasn't just a force to be fought. It was part of her now, part of who she was. It had claimed her, and there was no running from it. I have to go, she said, her voice trembling but determined. She turned her back on the city and stepped toward the rift. I have to face it. Only then will we know if there is a way to stop it from consuming everything. The air grew heavier as she approached the breach, the light from the rift now blinding. The voices in her mind whispered louder, as though they were gathering around her, urging her to step forward. The cosmic hum of the ether was in her blood now, and with every step, she felt herself drawn further into its grasp. Before she crossed the threshold, she turned back once more, meeting Lyra's gaze. The elder's eyes were filled with a mixture of sorrow and pride, as though she had seen this moment coming, though she had hoped it would never arrive. I'm sorry, Elowen whispered. Lyra nodded, her expression softening. You have always been the heart of Arindor, child. I only wish there had been another way. With that, Elowen stepped into the rift. The world around her exploded in light. Elowen's world dissolved into an endless expanse of light, a flood of brilliant, overwhelming energy that seemed to have no beginning or end. For a moment, she was weightless, suspended in a space that felt neither entirely real nor entirely imagined. The air pulsed around her, thick with the hum of something ancient, a cosmic rhythm that vibrated through every fiber of her being. Time itself seemed to stretch and twist, no longer bound by the laws of the world she had known. It was as though she had crossed into a place where the very fabric of existence was woven differently, where the lines between past, present, and future blurred into a chaotic dance. She could feel the ether now, its presence undeniable and all-encompassing. It was not just a force, it was alive, a consciousness. It reached into her thoughts, threading itself into her mind, weaving its essence into the deepest parts of her soul. The whispers from before had become clearer, more distinct. They spoke not just to her ears but to her very consciousness, like thoughts that were not her own. Child of Arindor, a voice echoed, its tone both soothing and terrifying. You have stepped into the realm of the ether. This is where creation and destruction converge. Here, you are more than a vessel. You are the one who can reshape all that is, all that has been, and all that will be. Elowen's breath caught in her throat. She could feel the weight of the words, the terrible power behind them. The ether was offering her something she could scarcely comprehend, something both beautiful and devastating. It was an opportunity to remake the world, to undo the destruction, to create a new future, one where the earth was whole again, untainted by the poison of humankind. But in the back of her mind, the memory of Lyra's warning lingered. This power comes with a cost. It corrupts, it consumes, it is no savior. The ether had been sealed away for a reason. Elowen, the voice continued, a sensation of warmth radiating from the words, do you not see? The world you come from is broken. It cannot be saved without sacrifice. But you have the power to set things right. The power to make the earth whole again. Her pulse quickened. The vision of a healed world, untouched by pollution, green and vibrant with life, flashed before her eyes. It was the world of her dreams, the world the Sylvari had longed for, a world they had fought to protect. But there was a darkness in the beauty of the vision. She could feel it now, the shadow at the edges of the ether's promise. It whispered to her, urging her to claim her power, to embrace it fully. "I can give you what you desire," the voice purred, "but you must trust me. You must surrender to the ether completely." For a moment, Elowen hesitated. The weight of her decision pressed down on her. Her thoughts were clouded with the enormity of the choice before her. Could she trust the ether? Could she wield this power without becoming the very thing she feared? Suddenly, the vast light around her seemed to shift. The world began to take form, shapes, structures, but not those of the earth she knew. These were strange, alien forms, twisting geometries that bent the laws of physics. They hovered and pulsed, like living constructs, mirroring the energy that now flowed through her veins. The voices grew louder now, calling her name, urging her forward. The power of the ether surged within her, drowning out everything else. "Elowen," the voice continued, now gentle, coaxing, "you have come far. But to reshape the world, to undo what has been done, you must make a choice. What will you sacrifice?" The question struck deep into Elowen's heart. She felt it then, the cost. The ether was not a simple gift. It demanded more than her trust. It demanded her very essence. Her life, her soul, her connection to the earth itself would be consumed in the process of harnessing its power. The very thing that had drawn her to the ether, the desire to heal the world, was the same thing that would lead to its destruction. To remake the earth, she would have to undo herself. But in that moment of turmoil, a sudden realization struck her with the force of a thunderclap. The ether was not a tool to be wielded. It was not meant to be controlled. The destruction of the old world was not the fault of the humans alone, nor could it be corrected by one individual, no matter how powerful they were. The ether was a force of balance, and it existed as both creator and destroyer. It had no allegiance to humanity or nature. It was beyond such notions. In the rift, Elowen saw a vision, not of a healed earth, but of a world in flux, where creation and destruction were one. The stars themselves had begun to tremble, and the very fabric of the universe stretched thin. She saw that the ether had been sealed away for a reason, not to protect the world, but to protect everything else. It was not meant to heal, but to reset, to undo the damage wrought by time itself. She understood now. The ether was not a savior. It was a reckoning. "Elowen," the voice whispered again, but now, it was different. The warmth had turned cold, sharp, demanding. "You are the key. The path you choose will shape the future. Will you embrace your destiny, or will you resist?" Her mind was made up. She had to stop the ether. It was not the answer to the earth's suffering, nor was it the solution to the destruction that had been wrought. It was a power that sought to erase everything, not heal it. With all the strength she could muster, Elowen focused on the world beyond the rift. She thought of the Sylvari, of Arindor, of the trees and rivers, of the sky and stars. She thought of the harmony they had lived in for so long, and she knew, deep in her heart, that it was worth saving. "I will not let you consume me," Elowen said, her voice resolute, filled with the defiance of 1,000 generations. "I will not let you erase what has been. The world deserves a future, not a blank slate." And with that declaration, she pushed against the ether, the force of her will creating a barrier, a resistance that shuddered through the very fabric of the breach. The rift trembled, and for a moment, the ether itself seemed to recoil, as if unsure of its next move. The light around her began to fade, the overwhelming energy ebbing away. The presence of the ether, its call, its power, seemed to pull back, as if acknowledging her resistance. But Elowen knew this was only the beginning. The battle was not over. In that moment, she understood that her true power was not in the ether, nor in its promise of a new world. It was in the choices she made, the balance she sought to preserve between creation and destruction. She was not the key to reshaping the world. She was the key to stopping it from being destroyed. Elowen felt the pull of the ether weaken, but it was not gone. It was still there, simmering just beyond her reach, waiting. As the light around her dimmed, she found herself standing in an empty space, a vast void stretching infinitely in all directions. There was no sky, no ground, only the hum of the ether, a rhythm that matched the beating of her own heart. Her defiance had momentarily caused the ether to recoil, but she knew that its nature was far more complex than a simple force that could be resisted. The rift was not just a breach in the sky, it was a tear in the very fabric of existence. The ether existed as both destroyer and creator, both force and consequence. It could not be closed with a simple act of will, nor could it be locked away again. It was always there, swirling beneath the surface of the universe, waiting for the right moment to surface. The space around her began to shift, to bend and warp, as though it too were caught in the tension between creation and destruction. The stars that had once shimmered in the sky now swirled around her, folding into one another like ribbons of light, their energy converging into a single point. The ether's presence was drawing closer, stronger, an inexorable force that could no longer be ignored. Elowen, the voice returned, deeper and more insistent than before. It reverberated through her bones, as though it were speaking to her very essence. You cannot escape me. You have felt my power, and you know now that you are bound to me. You cannot resist your nature. You are the vessel I have chosen, the one who will complete what was started long ago. She shook her head, forcing her thoughts to remain focused. The weight of the ether's words pressed against her mind, but she could not allow herself to fall into its allure. She had already made her choice, to stop it, to keep the balance intact. She wasn't the key to its victory. She was the one who would end it. And then, from the depths of the void, a figure appeared. It was an old man, wearing robes woven with starlight. His eyes glimmered with the same cosmic energy as the ether, but they were calm, full of wisdom, as though he had been waiting for this moment for eons. The man stepped forward, and with every step, the void around him seemed to tremble, as if the very air recognized his presence. You are not alone in this struggle. The figure spoke, his voice soft yet filled with power. I have watched over the ether for countless ages, just as you have watched over Arindor. I am the keeper of the threshold, the one who guards the balance between the realms. Elowen's heart skipped. The keeper of the threshold? She had heard whispers of such a being in the oldest of the Sylvari texts, but the stories were always vague, more myth than reality. Why have you not stopped the ether from reaching our world? Elowen demanded, stepping toward him, her voice trembling with frustration. Why wait until it was too late? The keeper's gaze softened. It is never too late, Elowen. It is simply the way of things. The ether cannot be stopped. It is both the beginning and the end. The world must pass through the fire to be reforged. That is the way of the universe. Elowen clenched her fists, unwilling to accept his words. I will stop it, she said, her voice low but fierce. I will not let it destroy everything we've fought for. The keeper regarded her with a mixture of pity and understanding. You cannot stop the ether, child. You must not. It is a cycle that has repeated itself for millennia. It is the cleansing fire that burns away the old, so that the new can arise. No, Elowen said, shaking her head violently. I will not let that happen. I won't allow Arindor, the Sylvari, or anyone to become fuel for your cycle. The keeper's expression became solemn. You misunderstand, Elowen. The ether is not the enemy. It is a force of nature, as old as the stars themselves. It cannot be controlled, and it cannot be destroyed. It will enter the world, no matter what you do. The question is, what will you do with it when it arrives? Elowen's heart pounded in her chest. The rift around her shimmered with the energy of the ether, its power surging, its presence felt in every breath she took. She felt as though the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for her decision. The keeper stepped closer, his gaze steady and full of ancient wisdom. The ether will find a way into the world. It always has, but it does not have to be a force of destruction. You have the power to decide how it will affect this world. You are the vessel, the key, Elowen. If you can find a way to understand the ether's true nature, you can reshape it. You can wield its power to create, not destroy. Elowen's mind swirled with doubt and confusion. Could it be true? Could she harness this force, this destructive power, and use it to heal the world, rather than unravel it? Or was this another deception, another lie hidden behind the allure of the Aether's promises? Her heart weighed heavy with the enormity of the decision. She thought of Arindor, of the Sylvari who had protected their city, of the forests and rivers she had sworn to preserve. She could not let them be lost to the Aether's destructive tide. But there was a glimmer of hope in the Keeper's words. A way to use the Aether's power for creation rather than destruction. It was a narrow path, fraught with danger, but it was the only chance she had. I understand now, Elowen said quietly. It is not about fighting the Aether, it is about mastering it. The Keeper nodded solemnly. Indeed, and you, Elowen, are the one chosen to walk this path. But know this, the cost will be great. To wield the Aether's power will require a sacrifice. It will change you. You will never be the same again. Elowen steeled herself. She had already come this far. She had already made the decision. She would not allow the world to be consumed by the Aether, no matter the cost. She would face whatever trials awaited her, and she would find a way to bring the balance back. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, embracing the Aether's presence, preparing herself for the final act that would determine the fate of Arindor, and perhaps the world itself. Elowen stood at the precipice of an unimaginable decision. The Aether pulsed around her like the heartbeat of the universe itself, its energy vibrating through her bones, filling her with both awe and terror. The Keeper of the Threshold watched her, his expression somber, knowing that the moment of reckoning had arrived. You are ready, the Keeper said quietly. The Aether has accepted you as its vessel, but now you must choose. Will you become the force of destruction that cleanses the old, or will you wield the power to rebuild? Elowen felt the weight of his words pressing on her chest. She had come so far, through a journey that had tested her beliefs, her loyalty, and her very identity. But now, standing on the edge of the unknown, she understood the true depth of the choice she faced. The power of the Aether was undeniable. It could reshape the world, erase the pollution and devastation that had ravaged the earth, and bring about a new age of balance. Yet the cost was clear. It would consume everything in its path, unraveling the very essence of life itself. But what if there was another way? Elowen turned her gaze to the stars, to the distant reaches of the universe that stretched out before her. She thought of the people of Arindor, the Sylvari who had lived in harmony with nature, who had fought to preserve the earth's beauty. They had entrusted her with their hopes, with the weight of their future. The Aether was not just a force, it was a responsibility. I will not let the world be destroyed again, Elowen said, her voice firm. But neither will I allow it to be erased. I will find a way to wield the Aether to heal, not to burn. I will carry its power, but I will not let it consume me. The Keeper regarded her with a look of deep understanding, though there was a hint of sorrow in his eyes. It is a perilous path you walk, Elowen. The Aether does not yield easily. Even with your resolve, it will test you, break you. But if you succeed, if you master it, you will be more than just a vessel. You will be a force of creation, a guardian of balance. As his words echoed in her mind, Elowen took a step forward, her arms outstretched toward the swirling light of the Aether. She could feel its power, its raw, untamed force, thrumming through the air around her. It called to her, offering its gift, but she did not reach for it blindly. She had learned the price of power, and now she would choose the path of balance. The Aether surged, as though testing her resolve, its energy wrapping around her, pulling at her very essence. Her body trembled as its power flowed through her, but she held firm. She could feel it inside her, a cosmic storm threatening to overwhelm her mind and soul. The force of the Aether was not something that could be controlled by will alone. It demanded harmony, understanding. And then, in that moment of unbearable pressure, Elowen let go. She surrendered to the Aether, not as a conqueror, but as a student, a partner. She no longer fought against its tide, but instead became part of it, flowing with its energy, letting it move through her without resistance. She closed her eyes, letting the light fill her mind, her heart, and her soul. For the first time, the ether did not feel like a force of destruction. It felt like a living, breathing entity, one that had always existed, waiting for someone who could understand its true nature. Elowen's mind expanded, transcending time and space, seeing the interwoven threads of the universe, the rise and fall of civilizations, the cycles of life and death, the delicate balance of creation and destruction. She saw the earth as it had once been, before the greed and corruption of humankind had torn it apart. She saw the forests, the oceans, the skies, all thriving in harmony. And then, she saw the devastation, the pollution, the dying lands, the broken cities. But she saw something else as well, the possibility of renewal. The earth could be healed, but only if it was allowed to go through its natural cycles, only if the balance between destruction and creation was honored. Elowen's heart swelled with understanding. The ether was not a force to be feared, nor was it a gift to be taken for granted. It was a part of the universe's natural order, a force that could bring about both life and death. It was the balance that the world needed, not an agent of erasure. With this knowledge, Elowen focused her will. She reached out with her mind and soul, gathering the raw power of the ether, channeling it into something new, something that could heal without destroying. She sought to temper the ether's destructive potential, to guide its energy toward rebirth rather than annihilation. The light around her flared brighter, a burst of pure energy that illuminated the entire void. The stars swirled faster, their brilliance reaching a crescendo before the light collapsed into a singular point. Elowen felt the surge of power, the overwhelming presence of the ether, as it responded to her intent. For a brief, terrifying moment, it seemed as though the universe itself would collapse in on her, consumed by the power she was attempting to harness. But then, there was silence. The light dimmed, and Elowen opened her eyes. She was back. The ether had receded, but its energy still thrummed in her veins, a part of her now. The keeper of the threshold stood before her, his expression one of quiet approval. "You have done it," he said softly. "You have mastered the ether, not as a weapon, but as a force of balance. The world will be healed, Elowen, but remember this: healing is not the same as erasure. You must respect the cycles of life and death. What you have done today is only the beginning." Elowen nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. She had chosen a path of creation, not destruction, but she knew that her work was far from over. The ether would not simply fix the world overnight. It would take time, patience, and careful stewardship. "I will not fail," Elowen promised. "I will help the earth find its balance again, no matter the cost." The keeper smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "I know you will, Elowen. You are more than a vessel. You are a guardian of the balance. Remember that." As he spoke, the world around her began to shift once more. The rift that had torn through the sky began to close, the light of the ether fading into the distance. Elowen felt herself being drawn back to Arindor, back to her people, back to the earth she had sworn to protect. The stars above her flickered, fading into the night sky, and Elowen knew that her journey was far from over. The battle for the world's future had only just begun. But for the first time, she felt a sense of peace, a belief that the earth could be healed, not through the erasure of the past, but through the careful balance of creation and destruction. And as she returned to the world she had fought so hard to protect, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would be ready to face them. For she was not just a guardian of Arindor. She was the keeper of balance, the one who would stand between the forces of creation and destruction, ensuring that the earth would never again fall to ruin.